wood gifts. Anyway, we'll be able to go see that. So with that, I'd like to start off with Bob Nolan today. Bob's been a lifetime woodworker. He was a union carpenter. He was superintendent for construction for Overall Company, a big major construction firm in the Bay Area. He's got started in wood turning by going to a craft show, and he saw what people were doing there. He went home, bought a lathe, and started wood turning. He makes miniatures. He does hollow forms. He does bowls. He does segmented turning. And of course, he does basket illusions and pyography. So he's really very versatile in all the things he does. Has several awards. He's shown his work and got awards at the Alameda County Fair and California State Fairs. He shows work over in a couple of galleries, one in over in Half Moon Bay, one in Walnut Creek. I don't remember the names right now. But so he's been doing this for a little while. Without anything further, I'd like to get Bob to get started.
Just a couple things that, I guess this isn't working.
It's working.
It's working? Good.
Want the mic, Bob?
No, they said it's working.
I don't think you need it.
Besides, I got a big mouth anyway. Just a couple things that, I've been a member of the club for 20 years or better, since we've been down at the senior center, and a member of the school staff. Jim pointed out the other day, 22, 23 years, you said? So I've been around. If you haven't seen me, I'm usually here on a Friday. I just want to go over a couple of the pieces that I brought. I just want to go over. This piece here is a maple burl. I tried not to cover up the color of the burl too much. This is number 3 out of 4 that I made. All the rest of them I've sold. I've been lucky enough to sell all my basket illusion stuff except the couple that you see up here. I've got a couple more caps. I don't know if I'm going to make any more or not, but the hard part of that is you got to make the beads in the air, so you can't move it too much. One of the Indian books that I read, that they were not allowed to make any baskets until they mastered the small ones. So I said, I got to do small ones. So that's what these are, little teeny ones. I made this piece and I put it in a juried show, and then I almost got kicked out of the jury show because the one judge said this wasn't wood. So I said, well, thank you very much. That's what it's supposed to look like. But this is real thin, and this one and this one, if you look at them, they're done on the inside as well as the outside. So with that said, I just want to say, too, basket illusions are good for embellishments. I do them on rims. This is a vase. This is the shape of a vase I really like. So use them for embellishments. Is a good use for a basket illusion. And on a real big piece, I'll put something on the back as well. Just to show, just breaks it up. If you just look at this, it just looks like a big blob of wood, you know. So it just kind of breaks it up a little bit if it's a big piece. This piece here, been sitting on my shelf for the last 6 months or so, because I can't decide if I want to split the rings again or not. My rule of thumb is width-wise, you don't go any bigger than a square. If it's rectangle, it's got to be split. So I can't make up my mind. My wife tells me I'm crazy when I ask her, do you think I ought to split it again or not? Joyce likes it the way it is. She says, that looks like a basket just the way it is. But I don't know. So with that said, I'll go up and make some dust. Now I already turned the back side of this. When I'm doing a shallow platter like this, I just butt it up here with the tailstock and hold it and turn the back side and turn the beads. So I already did the back side. So I'll put it on here and we'll go ahead and get the front side turned and bead. One thing I do have to say is I do not know how fast I turn, and I don't know how long things take. Because I never finish anything at once. Like I said, this piece has been sitting there for a long time. This piece sat there probably as long, 6 months before I finally finished it. So and my lathe does not tell me how fast I turn. So I just turn it where I like it and go for it. Okay, after you get your initial side, your back side turn it around like we did, and then we'll go on the front side. And on the front side of any of the pieces, it's just like if you're going to turn a real thin bowl. You can't turn the whole thing. You got to do it in stages. So we'll just turn this a little bit in stages. And all I'm doing is looking over the side and kind of mirroring the outside profile to the inside. And now you got to put the beads on as you go down, especially on a bigger platter, that platter, whatever. They'll start flexing on you really bad. You got to remember, because you're cutting a groove in there and relieving the pressure. I'll pass this around. This is a piece from one of my students that knocked it off the lathe and broke it. So I said, I'll use it for a demo piece. But you can look at how the beads thicken and weaken the walls on it. You catch it, Joel? It ain't gonna break. It's already been broke once. Beading tools. When I started doing this stuff, there was no commercial beading tools made. So if you wanted to do it, you had to make your own beading tools. Now I'll pass around. This is a little selection of beading tools that I made. And it does have a D-way, which I think a D-way tool is probably the best beading tool on the market right now. And he does make a variety of sizes. He makes some monsters. But these, look at them, this one was made from a piece of bar stock. And I used a peanut grinder to grind it and get the shape that I want it. This was a old spindle gouge, a Craftsman spindle gouge that I cut up. This, I don't know how many people here know Bonnie Klein, but I don't know if she's still around or not. But she did the most fantastic miniatures. I seen her at a show and I talked to her. Very nice lady. And I told her what I wanted. I said, I'd like to buy one of your tools. And she told me, well, I'm on the road for the next month, demoing. So give me a call, you know, when I get back next month. So I did, and she sent me this. This is her tool, so take a look at it. This is her tools that she used to make all her stuff. And I cut it back, and this is my beading tool for my small things. So, and this is a spindle gouge cut back into a beading tool. The problem with Sorby's has wings on it, on their beading tool, and it just don't work very well. So I only make about 4 beads at a time before I sharpen it. You see, I initially cut them and then I go back and recut them again. You don't have to worry about it. The one thing I like about this, you don't have to worry about sanding. You make a nice clean cut and you're making the beads because you're recutting it all again with your beading tool. And at the same time as I'm going down, I'll burn the valleys of them. And I don't burn them black like you've got a burning wire or anything like that. I just want to kind of cauterize it so when I ink it, the ink don't bleed. And there's 2 methods to do that I use anyway. I like anybody that's been in the trades or anything like that, they make different thicknesses for mica. This is real thin for mica, and it burns real nice. Just kind of melts the end of it when you stick it in there. It looks real black. Whoops. I'll just blacken the top of one of them. But anyway, it looks real black, but when you turn it off, it's not really black. And the next time around, this is a veneer. And it burns real good too. Some people can take a piece of sandpaper and burn it. I cannot get sandpaper to burn. I don't know, it's not in my wheelhouse. I leave some of the center in there, that gives the side support, so you can go in there again. So it's just a matter of, that was loud. It's just a matter of stepping down with your beads.
Try to get the beads round, fully round, or
Yeah.
close?
You try to get them totally round, just like a normal beaded surface. And if you look at these beading tools, if you look at them, look at the D-way tool straight on, and then look at it this way, there's a very little variation of depth of the bead that you can get on it. Not a big variation. Let me tell you, I try to get these, when I turn the platters, I try to get them as thin as possible. But you got to be careful not to get them too thin, because let me tell you, when one of these things come apart, it's pieces. It goes flying. On the bigger pieces, I did have a backup wheel. Whoops, I was going to use it. On the bigger pieces, I did have a backup wheel, steady rest, so it wouldn't flex the wood. On the bigger pieces now, unless you do it a few times, I don't highly recommend it. I got a wadded up towel with some rubber bands around it that I hold this way and I push up against the back side of the platter while it's spinning, and then do my beads to try to get the dome the way it is, because the side grain really will start to flex. Once you get to where the chuck is, or whatever method you have to hold it in the back, if you use a glue block or whatever, as soon as you get to that point, you can go all the way across with your beading tools because you got it all backed up on the back side. You don't need that extra support.
You said you use a wheel to support the back. It's almost like a steady rest kind of a type.
It's like a steady rest, yes.
It's something that you would.
Yes, I had a steady rest made with a wheel that backed it up, but it didn't like me anymore. I loaned it out and it didn't want to come home. So. And you can see I'm entering the beading tool at a slight angle. It's not 45, maybe a 30, but you want to bring it straight in 90 to the surface. So like if you're doing a bowl, you got to get in there this way to do the beads, or otherwise this thing will skate all the way across and give you a groove all the way across the beads that you just made, which is no fun to try to work them out. I do have to move the tool rest a little bit. And I'm going to lower it just a shade.
You don't do any sanding at all.
Pardon?
You don't do any sanding at all, right on?
No sanding. That's why I like this so well. No sanding. If you do go in there and you start measuring with calipers and all that good stuff, you can go back a little bit and cut off the top of one or two of the beads and recut them. You can't go back extremely far. I got a ton in the center. But anyway, we'll go for it. So you want to try, your best to get the right thickness as you go down. With that said, I got to raise it back up again. You want to bring in a beading tool at center line. And For the most part, if you can get real plain colored wood, you know, to do this, I like cherry the best, hackberry's good, liquid amber. I got tons of liquid amber at home, and there's the trees that have the spiky little balls on them all over the place. The wood is just blah, it's just plain. There's no figure to it whatsoever. But for this, it's ideal. And for that vase, it's wonderful that, and it turns really nice. Huh? Ooh, what? This is at just a little bit of an angle, so you engage the points in there, but it's not, like I said, not a 45 angle. And when you get to the center, if you got one more bead or not, I'm not going to get one more bead. So I'll burn these lines. But it really burns the bottom of this. You just hit it, and it just melts this Formica down. I don't know anymore. I mean, it's so.
Home Depot, you can get
Oh, you want to get the real thin stuff, and not color core. I was in a trade. I was a superintendent for a construction company. So I had access to all that stuff. When I retired, they closed I retired, and Randy Burns retired at the same time. So they had nobody in the cabinet shop, so they shut down the cabinet shop. And it would make all you guys sick, what they did. They called me up one day and they said, we're doing away with the cabinet shop. There's nobody to run it or do anything. So they're throwing away all the wood that they don't have any use for. So the mechanics room is lined with cherry veneer plywood. I brought home 2 truckloads of mahogany and maple and birch and that stuff that we had. And a 30-yard dumpster went out the door of good hardwoods. Because we built our own cabinets for Mechanics Bank, Chevron, all that stuff. Okay, now we got this all done. Now we got to figure out how we're going to beat it. This is the boring part. At least this is the boringest part for me. This is where you want to, if you drink, get your bottle. Now this lathe isn't so bad. I got a Powermatic, an old Powermatic at home. They don't have much room here at the head. You can see how big the heads are over on those mustard things. This has got some room that you can get around. So at home, this is a degree wheel. So at home, I usually use a spindle extension to give me a little room. This one, it wouldn't be necessary. And when I had my little jet lathe, when I would do it on my little jet lathe, it wasn't necessary because the head on it was small enough that I could reach around it. And this is the setup that comes with this wheel. And I have the name wrote on the board of this one. What that?
Cutting the backside now?
No, I'm not cutting anything.
Okay.
I'm just going to draw some lines. What is this? What kind of steel is this? These magnets don't want to stick to it. Well, anyway, this degree wheel, I brought some clamps. It just kind of, I'm surprised. I'm just surprised. I brought these clamps for a different reason, but now I'll pass around a couple different, I have like 8 different indexing wheels at home with different counts on them. This one here happens to be 90, 220, or 120 and 144. I'll pass these around. These are a couple of different indexing wheels. This is a homemade block instead of this one. This is a homemade block that goes underneath your ways and lock them. If anybody did the segmented class, this is more or less what we used in the segmented class. And indexing wheels. There's a lot of them on the market for sale. If you know somebody that has a CNC machine that can cut them for you, I've got two of them made from one of our own club members, Peter Travis. Raise your hand, Peter, so everybody can bother you. I've got 2 of them that he's made that are great. So there's a lot of them out there on the market. Yeah, you need to have a platform. And there's a couple guys now that are selling all this stuff commercial. I seen one guy up at up at Portland this year, and I looked at his things, and I don't know, for the price that he wants for this stuff, they're so easy to make. You know, I just can't, personally, I can't justify the expense.
Where do you get a 1-inch post with a square on top?
With the wood, it's not threaded on top. This one again, I've been around too long. This is a square scaffold foot off of Safeway scaffolding. So,
That's a 1-inch.
it works, right? I mean, I made one for the small lathes that I used to travel with. I made 7 of them. So if I went to a club, I told them they had to have small lathes. If I did a workshop. But I mean, you can make one out of a wood doll, if you're not going to get, real involved and do a lot of it, because the wood is going to deteriorate by you beating on it. The other thing is it depends on what size piece you made. The couple people that do sell them commercially, they'll sell you 2 pieces of plywood with a slot cut in them, and it will work for X pieces. Well, they ain't gonna work for any bowl like that, and it isn't gonna work for any platter like that, I didn't want to talk too much to the guy that was in Portland, but this platform is overkill because I use this platform to run my rotozip down it to do some, groove work. So this is a little bit overkill, the size of it. Oh, it's right here. You do want to be dead center on here. So just want to adjust this up. And all you do, I leave, they tell you to screw the screw into the hole, and there's an Allen wrench down here to lock the pin in place. Well, the post is wobbly. It's not going to throw your lines off. So I leave it loose so I can just there's one. And there you go, here's another one. I don't go every line to the center, and I'll bring them up because, yeah, I need another. Do we have any little clamps in the deal? I brought two clamps because I thought this thing was magnetic. Thought I could stick it to that. I don't bring every line to the center because you'll end up with just a black glob in the center. So I don't look. I just stop it here and there and what have you. Let me pass this piece around while I'm trying to anchor this thing down. See, I had to use a clamp there. Now, the front side is totally beaded. And I've dropped what I call dropping the lines. Go down X far, and I stop that line. Because once again, if you took every line to the center, you end up with a black glob in the center. So I totally did this side, so you can look down here in the center and see where I've dropped the lines and that stuff. You don't want to drop them all at the same bead unless you're totally going to bury that in your design because it will stand out like a sore thumb. Me and Jim went to a show one time, and me and Jim was on the other side of the room. I pointed out the piece of a guy's basket illusion. I said, right there at the bottom of that arch is where he stopped every bead. And after I pointed it out, you could see the ring all the way around the piece. But look at the back side. This is how I'll do maybe every fourth line, and then I'll freehand the ones in between, and then I'll drop the lines. This piece here has 230 lines in it going around. So and if you look, I put a piece of tape on the top of that just to help me lay out my design. You can see, if you look at it, you can see a few little pencil marks on that piece going around, and that helps me lay out my design reference. I was lucky enough one time, they used to have a powwow down in San Ramon at the San Ramon Senior Center. And I was lucky enough, I went down there, and this one lady, I talked to her for a while, and I told her what I was doing.
Let me interrupt you for a minute. If you haven't guessed, we're having some technical difficulties. And not sure what we can do with it today. I think the software on the machine that we have is a little outdated, and it keeps shutting down on us. We have one good camera that's been disconnected from our system, and I'll play with this. The other other camera is recording everything that you see, and that'll be available on the website and on YouTube when it's all done. So for the inconvenience, I apologize. So I'm going to take this machine and give it to Jim Rogers, and he's going to take it home. And we're going to do an upgrade on the entire software for it and try it again. And the next time we do this, we'll do the next thing. We also have a brand new thing up on the meeting board over on the corner. It'll allow us to set up even another screen that's separate from this machine. Stuff a little different. So, my apologies for this, and sorry. And when this is available, I'll send out an email to everybody that says it's available and you can see it. So my apologies for this.
Everybody's entitled to a refund.
Prorated though.
You can see how boring this is. Just going, just,
You're not on center anymore. I think when you clamped it down, you're
oh, I did.
down.
You're right.
You're not on center.
You're right. I mean, you can put two screws in this to hold it down, but this platform has been with me since I started doing this. And if I would have been screwing them down each time I'd done it, it would be full of holes. So I mean, if you're only going to do a few, giving it a try, and that stuff, or if you're just going to do it a certain number of degrees, you know, I wouldn't worry about it. Drill it, put screws in it. And I'm kind of going kind of fast here, but this is all you do is just keep on going around and around. And you can imagine, you know, if you do a big piece, you know, I try to at least get these lines on the piece before I go in the house and give up. I say I try. Always don't work, but I try.
How many bottles do you go through?
I tell you, sometimes I wish I don't drink, but sometimes I wish I did. I can't hear you.
Do you make separate support boards depending on the shape of the bowl that you're doing?
These pieces of plywood,
Yeah.
I got to pile them. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't work, and I got to make a new one. Or I modify the one I got, I take it over to the bandsaw and slice it up again. This is just old shelving material, particle board stuff. So it's nothing special, but there's not one or two shapes that are going to handle everything, you know. How many do I got in there? I'll do a couple more. But you can see this is part of the tedious part that I'm not really. This is probably the less fun part out of the whole deal. That's enough of that. So is there any more questions before we move on?
Your bowls, it's got the same on the inside and the outside. How do you draw the lines on the inside and the outside of those?
On the inside and the outside of the ones that I already got?
Like these minis here.
Hollow forms.
On the inside, the outside? That's coming. Chapter 2. We can do that now. There's a couple other things I'm going to pass around. I didn't have a lot of stuff, so I had to hurry up and make stuff for her. For hollow form, this is a lid of going to be a hollow form. and you want to do a lap joint, when you make your joint to join the two, and you want to start at your beads going at the lap joint to the rim, and the one underneath it, the other half that's going to be this way, from the lap joint down to the base, so that they'll match up. And then when you do your lines like this, you have it put together on the lathe, the top and the bottom with pressure on it, and you'll draw the lines on the top and the bottom. And while you still have, then you take the top off, and then when you still have the bottom on the lathe, you do the bottom again on the inside. Now on the inside of the lid, with the lines on the inside, you take a flexible ruler and you go and put them on there by hand. That's why I go maybe every sixth one, fourth one, something like that, and then I'll freehand in between them. I can freehand them relatively good. I'll pass this around. I just remembered. I couldn't find the right set of tools at home, and I just remember where they're at. When I was making this to bring it, there is not a tool that goes inside here. And this piece that I'm making is an Indian carrying basket. When I get done with it, it's going to have 4 stacks on it. Okay? There is not a tool that you can bead the inside of this with. And you get the real little teeny small pieces with the necks on them. There is no tool commercially sold that does that. So, I have a couple versions of this that I've got, and I didn't know where, I just remembered where the pieces were, the tips that I made to go in here to make the different size beads. So these beads on the inside of here are bigger than what they're supposed to be. So I took one of my pin turning skews and I cut the handle off and turned it and ground it backwards so I'd have something to show you guys. So I'll pass this around. This bar that I made, this is a 90. This end is a straight on and a 45. So there's no angle that I can't get at now with this. And where I just remembered the tips are, this bar fits in my coring system, and they're in the box in my coring system. I just remembered because I was coring something. But this, I'll pass this around, and how I burn the lines on the inside here. This is a skewer stick out of bamboo from the supermarket that I burned the line on the valleys on the inside. So I'll pass these things around. You can take a look at them.
Before you further, the cloth pieces that you were just going to take too long to do it, but you just do that with a pencil, or are you burning it?
These lines? Well, they'll be burned in
But
in
as you're
10 minutes. Pardon?
As you do it, as you're burning it,
No.
after.
Yeah, after.
Yes, they go with a pencil.
I just put, yeah, these are guidelines, if you will. These are just guidelines. So now we'll take all this stuff off. This will take anybody got questions? Because this is going to take a minute to.
So why don't you burn it at that stage in pencil line? Just running it flat.
Well, the main thing is you don't get, I don't have the control to do it. There is a commercial one made that you can put your pin in and hold it and do that. You're like this all the time. I just don't think it works out very well. I don't see Joel Dahl here. Joel Dahl bought one. And it's, Joel, I hate to pick on somebody that ain't here, but I will. Joel Dahl bought what Joel is talking about. All it is a block of wood with a hole drilled in it that they sold him. You stick your pin in the block of wood and then slide it on this platform. I couldn't believe that they sold that to him, but anyway. It don't work out as good because you don't have as control where the lines start and stop, in my opinion. What do I do with the chuck key? Oh, there it is, right in front of me. Yeah.
Are you just freshening it up on a card, or?
No, I'll take it, it's just like a parting tool, heel to toe on the wheel, just heel to toe on the wheel. Sometimes I have to, you have to watch that you don't start getting a bump in the middle of it. So you may have to hold it a little bit more on there to get rid of the bump in the middle if you start to put less pressure as you're rocking it. So you want to keep this at a relatively straight angle. Now there's a lot of lathes out there that have indexing on them. This lathe here goes to 48 indexing. So you don't need all this other junk. But with that said, all the lathes that I know of, to use that indexing, there's a stupid little pin in there all the way around to this side that you got to move in and out on every hole. That's much more time consuming than what it's worth. Now everybody's going to want to know, how do you get rid of that? Your spigot on the bottom. You got your jumbo jaws. I use the jumbo jaws. If you got a real good set of vacuum cup with a real nice pad on it, you can vacuum chuck these things now what did I do with that thing? Now I know why we lose these things all the time, Jim, because I can't find them. Once again, you don't want to, tighten this too tight, because you just relieve both sides of this and you can pop it relatively easy. I just put my fingers underneath it. There's another point that ain't good about this. You got to stick your thumb in there now and then to line up the two things. Come on, get in there. Oh, no, why don't I want to go in? Maybe I'll show you, maybe I won't. There we go.
Are there times that you want to lay out your beads from the inside, working out to the edge?
I usually go from the outside in, and I think the advantage of that is you always end up with a little dimple in the center when you do it my way. If you come out from the inside coming out, you may end up with a half bead or 3/4 of a bead. So in the outside of your platter or bowl is a different circumference than the inside. So they're not going to line up coming out. So you're going to get a little goofy rim, if you will.
Presumably you could treat that outside edge and make it a perfect length of a bead if you started on the inside.
You know, if you started on the outside going in, you could get a perfect bead on the right at the top, and down here at the bottom, you'll get a different size dimple on this side than you will on the other side.
When did you lose the support of the wood that you were talking about if you started on the inside?
Pardon?
The support of the wood that you were using to make the beads, and if you started from the inside going out, would that start flexing the wood too much?
Well, it would flex the wood, yes, more, because you're relieving all the pressure. Okay, this is nothing fantastic. We all know how to take the bottom of a bowl off. One thing I never did do is, you want to check, see what you got down here at the bottom. You know, just like any bowl, so you kind of don't go through. That blue that you're seeing on the bottom of this was some of that wood from my company. Actually, it was some stuff left over from Chevron trim. Chevron blue.
Chevron, we would like to collect our royalties.
Chevron was very nice to the company I work for. We got a lot of work from Chevron. A lot of work in the refineries. The tool rest is a little lower than what I like. Actually, I'm going to have to raise it up because I'm never going to hit the center. It will still give you, if you got a good hard wood, it will still give you a good bead if you don't sharpen it a whole lot. But if you get into some of the softer stuff, this is birch. If you get into some of the softer woods and you try to start cutting beads, you'll start to get tear out. And if you start getting tear out, the only thing that you can do is you can go back, try to recut the bead, sharpen it, and go back and try to recut the bead. By doing that, you're going to make that bead or that series of beads lower. So you're going to have to flare them out so they kind of look uniform. One of the best, or I think the best basket illusion person was Jim Atkins. He lives south of St. Louis. His son used to be the president of our club. If you look at Indian baskets, they're not uniform. But I talked to Jim and that stuff. I says, Indian baskets aren't uniform. Should I try to follow the Indian basket, or should I make them uniform? He said, make them uniform or nobody will buy them. He said, they'll look uneven. But like I think I started saying, I met a basket weaver down in San Ramon when they used to have that powwow down there. And she let me sit behind the counter with her while she was weaving. And very nice lady and very informative, because I could never figure out how they can sit there and weave and get anything to match up. Now I got a skew, I got a little point right there in the center that don't look very good. So you just take your skew and just clean it off, and that's the dimple. So once again, how do you put your lines on that? As that piece that was being passed around, I take my little flex ruler and go from that one that I already got in there from doing the platform, and I go to that center with my little flex rule and draw a line. And that's it. Now, when we're going to start burning here in a minute, since I get this all taken apart, I do know why we lose all them chucks, because I can't find it again.
It's right there.
Where? Help, help. Well, that's relatively good for the thickness. I'm practicing for the Frisbee contest again at the picnic.
When you start with lumber, I understand that, but if you take a big piece of wood like for your big bowl down in front of you there, you have to really be careful to get it dry before you start on it.
Yeah, you need to have, well, yes. I mean,
Unless you want to do it all in one day.
you want to get it, you want to dry to do it. Now, I have seen two pieces done by a person that I've had conversations with, good and bad. Cindy DeRosa's old partner, Dave. He did a couple green madrone pieces that and they warped and cracked, but they look like a basket that you would normally throw away. Now, I've got a very nice letter from him and Cindy that I still got it to this day that I like, but I don't like. But when I first started, there was only 3-4 people that I know that did it. And the guy that started it, as far as I'm concerned, Basket Illusion, was, I probably butcher his name, Lincoln Seismith. He has a couple pieces in the Smithsonian, 3 pieces actually, that I've always been interested in baskets, but he's probably the guy that got really got the basket illusion thing started.
Can you explain how you sharpen that U-8 tool?
It's just heeled to toe like a parting tool. It's did that plastic tub come around? Come back with all the tools in it?
Yeah.
If this is the grinding wheel, all I do is take it up to the grinding wheel and go like that. That's all I do. And like I said, you don't want to get a bump in the middle, so you got to keep even pressure on it, so you don't get a bump in the middle of your piece. Now, if you look on the board again, there's two different types of beading process. If you're in a construction trade and that stuff, it's called running bond and stack bond. The one in the red is a running bond, which is a basket weave that probably twice as much time to do as the running bond one, because you got to be real, and I've got extra tools that I'll pass around that you can see. You got to be really careful when you're burning that you don't hit the beads on either side of it and put a burn mark on them. So it takes you going like this instead of a running bead, which I do most running beads. I may do one stack bond. I may do one, maybe two of the running ones a year. And when I do them, they're always little ones because they are much more time consuming to do. You can get a different variety of patterns by a running bond and a stack bond. You can get it looks like the same pattern, but it's much more finer. Now, when you're burning, I have a burn master tool, burner at home, but this is a coal wood cub, which is, inexpensive deal, unless you're going to get real radical with pyrography and what have you. This is more than adequate to do. If you're handy and you got an extra battery charger and a dimmer switch laying around your house and that stuff, you can build your own burner, but yeah, it'll disintegrate your bits if you're not careful.
Got a turning glove or a golf glove?
This is a golf glove. All the burning pins get hot. And you see all the commercial or the professional turners, if you will, that make a living at it. They make their own fancy handles to take care of the heat. That's one of the reasons why I got the burner that I got. It's got two ports. When the pins start getting hot, I can just switch over to the other pin on the other burner and go. Because I guess I'm too lazy to pull the pin out of this one and put another pin in it. But you can switch back and forth. Or if you get into pyrography, if you got a 2-port one, you can go, from burning something, then you can go shading, and that stuff. You can go back and forth. It has its advantages. It has its disadvantages because it costs more money. Now my primary. What am I looking for? Oh, I'm looking for the piece. Where'd it go? Where'd that thing go? Okay, now I'm going to pass 2 pins around. These are 2 different brand pins. I usually use razor tip because razor tip is a little bit more inexpensive. But the plus side is that they'll replace them for a minimal charge, and they'll replace anybody's pin if it burns up. This is a Detail Master pin that I used to use all the time for, that company went out of business. Little family feud, and they went out of business. But razor tip will still fix their pins. I think they're up to $12 now to fix them. Send them to Canada and they'll fix it and send it back. $12 is still better than $27, $30 for the pins. Now, and the reason I brought 2 different styles, you can see the tip. This is the tip. I don't know if you can pick the tip up. This is,
Hold it still and I'll get it.
this is the tip if I want to do a running bond. It's got a radius. So you can just go in there and burn all the way up and down the deal. But you got to go in every one this way, and it really starts to beat up your wrist for it. And when you buy these, razor tip makes one, but the points are so sharp, and if you look at this one, I filed down the points just a little bit on it, so it will fit the bead more accurate before the points bury themselves in the wood, bottoms out, and you end up with no burn on the top of the bead. And then if you don't get round beads when you're putting them on the piece, when it's on the lathe, you get a little flat spot. You can go back with your razor tip pin and just touch up that flat spot with it, because you don't want gaps on your beads. So if you want to hand those to somebody or whatever, you can take a look at the 2 difference of the 2. Now, after you get done, you want to be comfortable, because this takes a long time too. I mean, you don't get done in an hour. Now I use magnifiers to do it. These I bought years ago. Actually, I bought them from the club. The club had them. And they still work. I bought 2 pairs, and then the other pair I haven't even got out of the box yet. Because they last. I mean, you don't abuse them. Stick them on your head and go. I mean, if you got real good eyesight, maybe you don't need them. But I gotta have deals. Now the other, you want to have some sort of waste block to check your heat. It's preferable if you got the same kind of material, you know, maple, mahogany, just for the grins. And it's good. You don't want to breathe the smoke. You don't want a lot of smoke. You don't want it really to see any smoke, and you definitely don't want to see any flames like you're doing. Well, you know, I do pyrography too, and I make my own tips and that stuff. And when you're doing pyrography, the different kind of deals is called branding. You want you want flames and sparks. You want some action going on. There is a time for the smoke and the deal, but you really don't want a lot of smoke, and you want to put a fan here, if you're just going to use a fan, to suck the air away from you. You don't want it blowing onto the tip of the pin and cooling the tip of the pin irregular. If you're really going to like this and get into it, they make different kinds of little heat or fan boxes here. I got a 3 fan box sitting right here next to my bench, and they're worth the money. And
Make it or buy it?
excuse me?
Did you make it or buy it?
It's a store-bought one. Yeah. And I said I really like razor tip pins. With that said, another thing, we have a local shop, if you want to call Berkeley local, that sells razor tip pins, burners, and what have you. Jim, the guy that owns the place, he's nice to the club. He's donated stuff to the club. So the owner is named Jim, and he's a real nice guy. If you go down there, tell him you're not going to get any deal per se, but it gives us something that he's going to maybe donate something to the club. Now, I don't know if you can see me just, this is a stack bond. I'm just running right down the line.
Cane store, is the cane shop, is that what it's called? Yeah, the cane shop. It's really good Mexican food, I'll put that.
And I'll go like every 4th row, something like that. And this is a perfect example right here. I don't know, I think this is when the platform jumped up a little bit. And maybe go every 4th row all the way to the center. If it looks right, this one isn't going to go all the way to the center. It's going to stop right there. But if you can see this one right here, I don't know if you can see the pencil line or not.
I got it on this one.
If you can see the pencil line, I think this is where it jumped up. You got a big wide gap here. So that's not going to work. So I just freehand it off the side of that pencil line to give me more uniform beads, burn lines. And I'll go down until where I figure I can't color, and then I stop. If I can't color it, there's no sense doing it as far as I'm concerned. So this goes, it goes relatively fast, but when you have a whole bunch of them, it just takes a lot of time.
So when you freehand those ones next to a pencil line, how do you get rid of that pencil line?
Let me get a couple more. We can do it. Where is it? A white eraser. Don't use a red eraser. Don't use an art gum eraser because it will leave residue on there. I erase them, and you can use chemicals to get rid of alcohol. Will dissolve the lines. I don't want to put any alcohol on the thing. But when you use the eraser, you have little curlicues from the eraser and that stuff. Don't brush it with a wire brush or anything like that, or take your compressor and blow it. You'll blow it in these grooves that you're burning, and then you'll sit there with a little dental tool picking that white eraser out of all those lines. Yeah, I do when I'll go around, I'll burn everything, and I'll erase the whole thing, and then I'll just hold it upside down, and I'll just take a towel and lightly brush it, and they just more or less just all fall off. You might have one or two stuck in there, but you won't have anything like if you try to use compressor to blow them off, because you'll just be blowing all that stuff into these cracks. Let me get a few more burn here. But you can see this is much faster than you can, if you wanted to do a running bond, that you would have to go bead by bead by bead by bead. I heard somebody talk, but
He asked if you get the very top edge.
well, I do not do the top edge at this point because I'm not sure what I want to do with the top edge. There's a couple ways to do the top edge. It's lacing it, like you see, and then there's the whip stitch that goes all the way from one to the other. And I mean, if you know what you want to do, you can do it at this stage of the game, but it's hard not to get overburned if you try to come down on the piece like this because you got a sharp edge. So it's very easy to get overburn on it. So if I want to do a whip stitch, which is just a loop all the way around it, I'll turn the piece over and I'll just come back. I'll blow on the tip. I didn't do it on that first one because I'm busy talking. I'll blow on the tip to cool it a little bit so I don't get overburn. And the other thing that you can do to try to eliminate your overburn is a running start. You get your pin in the groove that you already burnt, the line down here, which already takes the heat, and then you can go up over it. Can you see that? And you don't get the overburn like you got on that first one. And the overburn, once again, you can get off if you want to with alcohol. You can sand it, lightly sand it. We'll get it off. I use little 3M pads to do it. That's another thing. If you have a platter or that big bowl, I wanted it to feel a little bit more smooth because when you burn, you're raising the edges of the wood, so it's going to feel a little rougher. If you lightly sand it with a 3M pad, it will take that edge off and it will give you the burn marks left in there because you're burning down in the wood, but it will take off that edge so it will feel smoother. Where was I at? Any other questions before I duck my head back down? I do every fourth line because I don't know where I want to stop. I want to stop them down here at the bottom. You know, I want to stagger the stitches at the bottom. So if I do every fourth line, just because it's odd, I can go back to the middle one and bring it down as far as I want. Then the next one, then the ones in between those two, I can bring that down as far as I want to. And then, like here, on this piece here, these are too wide going up this way. They're too horizontal, if you will, going this way, going across. They're not square. And the square is a minimum for me. So I'll go back and I'll split those again. I'll come back in here again and I'll freehand that and I'll just split that again. Oh, I didn't blow on it again. You see a little burn mark there. I'll come back and I'll freehand that. Come down. Okay, that's all the farther I can go. And I'll come back over here. See, now I did one, you got to do them all. And one thing that I try to do that I should have mentioned when I passed that one piece around with the tape on the top, I hope nobody took that 230 piece of tape off of there. When you when you index it on here, if you mark it, 90 or 120, write that down someplace. Because after you're burning here all the time, when you get done, how many did I start with? Then you got to sit there and count them all. And then that's another thing. It's not no fun if you don't write it down someplace and you got to go back. And that's what that piece of 230 is, just so I can remember how many lines there are. That's on both 230s on both sides. So really that piece has got 460 on it, totally. I did a 19-inch hollow form piece, one of my signature pieces, that was sold down at Gallery M. My daughter took it upon herself to count all the squares. She got 1 million of them. It was just over 1 million squares on it. So I don't count how many squares there are on it, but I do count how many radius lines there are on it. I wish $1 a square. A penny. I don't make any money at this. I do it because I like it. And, you can only have, I've probably done 200 of these in my life so far. I'm just guessing. Do I want 200? I don't have a big enough closet to stick 200 pieces in. So I'm not, I'm not doing it for a living. I'm doing it for fun. And I find it relaxing. I can go out and shop and I can just sit there and burn as long as I want to, or till my wrist gets sore. So, and the people that buy my stuff are usually happy, more than happy with the stuff. And they always criticize that I'm too cheap. Larry can tell you a story about up in Portland. That guy. I was very happy in Portland. I sold 2 pieces in Portland. Both of them went to collectors, so I was very happy.
They were woodturners, a lot of woodturners.
But let me get a couple more lines burned here and we'll move on. Because I think I've already overrun my 20 minutes that I said I got. But your pin, you're doing this, your pin will start to get buildup on it. So you can clean your pin a couple different ways. Razor Tip sells a little goofy little gizmo that has a little file inside of it, or a little sharp razor edge that you can scrape your pin on. I use the superfine little diamond card that you buy in packs of 3s. Just strap it once or twice on it. Or I use a little brass brush, especially when I'm branding. I'll hold it here and just clean off the soot off the piece, because you will get some buildup on there. And the other thing that you got to watch out for, it's not necessarily watch out for, but when you're burning, the side grain and the end grain burns different. So the end grain, your pin will just bury itself in there, so you got to go a little bit faster. And when you get to the side grain, you say, oh, my pin must be dull, or the heat's wrong, or something like that, because you're going, it's harder and you're kind of getting a little bumpy over top of it, so you just got to slow down and go it. You have very little side grain in something like this. Most of it's end grain. But when you run into that spot that's side grain, it feels like the pin is dull, or you're not, you're not getting the heat anymore, and your tendency is to go over and turn up the heat. Just leave it the way it is and just slow down a little bit, because half a dozen lines you'll be out of that, or a dozen lines or so, you'll be out of that spot. So, do I still got it on? Now, for whatever reason, I'm off center just a little bit on this one.
Hey, just 1 second. I need to change battery.
Pardon?
I need to change the battery. Oh, I need to take that off to do that.
It's, once you get all the way around this thing, all it does is shifts the center line of the piece just a little bit off to the side. It's nothing, unless you're really drastically off. When you're making your lines here, if you're not on center, you'll start to swing an arc on your piece. And then is it noticeable? Yeah, but it's a different effect. I mean, if you really want to get a nice radius lines on your piece, instead of the platform that I had, get a piece on there, an old bowl, cut it in half, and run across the rim of the old bowl, and you can get a nice radius line, and you'll get a nice spiral going around your piece. So there's a lot of options that you can play around with this stuff if you want to. One of the things that I talked to Dave about is I had a conversation with him. I do Indian basket designs. I don't do just color. A lot of guys just throw color out there and throw it on. One black line here and 6 red lines here, and then 1 yellow line, and then another black line, and then 6 more red ones. I try to do Indian basket designs, and I try to stay with the territory of what I'm doing, and that's my thing. I'm not saying that it's not good or not bad by just making big color swirls and that stuff, but I try to stay with the basket designs. Now, how much time we got? Well, we got a little bit of time. The next step after you get all your lines burnt on here, the next thing is color. I use three brands of pins. My primary pin is a Faber-Castell. They got a nice point to them. They got color that stays. I did a color test of a whole bunch of pins, and I put it on the dashboard of my truck to see how they'd fade. And these 3 stayed really good. Some of the other ones out there, I mean, don't use a Sharpie, please. I mean, if you use a Sharpie just writing, you get a blue tint to it. If you ever notice, if you sending something to somebody where you're doing a lot of writing, you'll get a little bit of a blue tint out of the black. The ink does not stay. I don't know what kind of ink they use, it does not stay. So, but I use Faber-Castell. They're sold, once again, in Berkeley and some of the retail stores around here. Dick's Blicks is in Berkeley. A couple stores, there's one in Oakland, there's one in a big store in San Francisco.
Michael's has.
Pardon?
Michael's?
I don't know if they do or not.
No, they do.
But and they sell them online. I know Tomboy is not a good one. I used it for a while, and I started looking at the palm of my hand when I was coloring, because you go over top of your deal. I was getting color on my hand. It don't set. It takes a while. You can't go over top of it right away with your deal. You got to set and let it lock in. I know Craft Supply sells them, but I wouldn't use them. I mean, there's too many other pins out there that dry and set fast and stay fast. I mean, like I said, I've been doing this for a long time, and I only had one person call me about the piece that they bought from me. And that person wanted me to sign it. I never signed it. He said, will you sign it? I said, I signed everything. He said, you didn't sign this one. I said, well, you got a collector's item. But Copic is another pin I use. Copic is a good pin. Their points are a little bit bigger than the Faber-Castells. Copic does sell an empty pin. So if you want to mix up special colors or anything, you can buy an empty pin and put your color in it. And they have replacement tips that you can put in. To me, it's not worth the effort. I make a bigger mess by trying it. My mom used to tell everybody, Bob comes home, he can get muddy if it rains in the next county. Bob will come home muddy. I couldn't do it. I got a couple of the empty pins at home. I'll give them to you, Larry. You can try it. I just make a mess trying to put dye into them. I got the little teeny funnel. Just ain't working. I even tried it with the hypo and tried squirting it in that way, and I still make a mess. But anyway, I'll pass a couple of these around. The other thing, who's catching?
So you said Faber-Castell and Copic, who else? You said 3.
Prisma. Joel, here's the other brand. I got Prisma at home. I didn't bring Prisma. Now, one thing about the Copic pins and the Prisma pins, they have a little bit more alcohol in them, so they have a little bit more of a tendency to bleed. If you don't get your line burnt and you don't get your valleys burnt, and the bleeding also will depend upon what kind of wood you use. Hackberry is a terrible thing. You really got to make sure you get your lines burnt in that, or otherwise you can put ink in this spot and it'll pop up over here. And it's almost like a willow or something like that. I mean, they're really stringy, but they're really nice wood to turn and burn. Okay, let's burn a couple or color a couple lines and. In most of I'm going to talk Indian designs now, because that's primarily what I do. Most of the designs are odd numbers. Diamonds, 3, 5. The little people, I like the little people. They're an odd number, they're 9. The head and neck is 3, body is 3, legs are 3. So if you look at the Indian designs, most of the Indian designs are in odd numbers. So when you're dividing, that plate with the tape on it, so when you're dividing up the deal, you may have to leave a space in between. Or sometimes, I don't know what that big piece has on it, if it has men and women on it or just men.
It's hard to tell, no skirts.
Well, anyway, if sometimes I'll have if I do a man and a lady on the design, I'll have like they're holding hands, or otherwise I'll put another space in between them so the numbers work out right this way. You know, one extra. So you got to do your little layout. And if you're not sure how to do the layout, I talked to a couple students that come in that want to do basket illusions. I think I scare most of them off, but you can get graph paper online and get a piece of graph paper online and lay it out. Good old-fashioned X's and O's. You know, the red X is red. The black X is black. Or there's nothing, there's nothing. So, I mean, so if you're not certain, you know, just go online and get some graph paper, or if you got a book of it, and it's hard to get graph paper that goes all the way down to nothing. But my great computer skills and my loving wife can find this for me, because I only know where the on and off button is on the computer. But you know, lay it out before you even get started. Before you get started and say, oh no, I made a mistake. Because once you start with the ink, you make a mistake, get your carving knife out, because all you can do is carve it out, and unless it's in the middle of a big black pattern or something like that, it's going to show. Because you got to carve. The ink don't go real deep, but it goes deep enough you're going to carve the whole bead out. So, you know, make sure your pattern before you get started. And if you do, and I do, everybody does. I mean, I've looked at the guys that make a living at it. You know, and I see spots that they overrun. If I'm overrun and say, oh shit, I throw my pin down and I got a carving knife right there. I hit it before it's got a chance to bleed in very far. And nick it out. So you have, once again, it depends upon the wood. If you got a maple, you got a good chance by hitting it right away, it ain't going in. If you're using mahogany or cherry or something like that, forget it, you're going to carve the whole bead out, or a big gouge out of it to get it out, because it will soak up the ink. But the other, one last thing before I'm out the door, is the Fabric and Stell pins. All the pins are some sort of fabric tips. And after wood is abrasive, as we all know, it will start to make the pin tips fuzzy. Take your a razor, an X-Acto knife, and your little block, and you can cut that fuzziness off. Copic pins have like a little wick on the inside of them. You cut it too much, look out, because the ink's coming out. You just nicked the primary tube that feeds that little felt tip, and the ink's going to come out. So you don't get to whittle as much. Fabric and Stell, you can whittle down to nothing. And you can get a pair of tweezers and pull that tip out a little bit and cut it a little bit more. But once again, you don't want to pull the tip out too far, because then the ink's going to come out. But you get a good lifespan out of these Fabric and Stell. I really like them. The only drawback is they don't have a lot of colors. They're limited in colors. And I guess there is one more thing. Take a block of wood. If you go down to Blick's, go down, take a block of wood down there, because the wood will change the color of the pin. And if you ever go down to Blick's, where their pin racks are, they don't mind you doing it. You're not sneaking in and doing it on the sly. They put little paper tablets up on top of the pin racks so you can look and see what color ink it is. But that'll mean nothing for us going on a block of wood. So take a little block of wood down there and just put a little swatch on there and do it. So with that said, unless anybody's, yes, yes, and yes.
Well, on COVID, there was the guy that did it and he used India ink.
With a fountain pen?
I don't know what he used.
Well, the only Indian ink that I know of comes in little bottles. I don't know of a pen per se that calls it out as Indian ink that they use.
Japanese art pens. Japanese art pens are
Japanese what?
they say Indian ink. They look like brushes and.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the brushes, yes. But not the pin, not a pin like this.
No, it's
Yeah,
not a pen like that. One end is like the Prismacolor with a long point, which is like a brush, and the other is the short point.
I mean, I got the Japanese paint brushes they look just like this, that you can dip in the ink and do your Japanese lettering and stuff like that. But well, maybe it's something for me to look at down at, they got them at Blick's?
Art stores, flats.
Well, Blick's is an art store.
Flats, but I mean, besides.
I know a couple other art stores in the city. I have to take a look.
Oakland has one. There's a flats in Oakland on 14th Street.
Oh, that's good to know. I have not seen those, so I don't know nothing about them.
There's a pin, I think from Germany, the Kidiograph, which comes in all different sizes and works well with Indian ink. Very nice pen.
I mean, they come preloaded. I mean, they're a regular pen.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, you don't, Bob, we were at a symposium one time, and he went to a basket illusionist, and he was trying to sell his pins. I don't know if you remember this or not, Bob. And Bob come out to me and Jim Atkins sitting out in the lobby, we were talking, and he said, he wants these pins. And I gave Bob some money and told Bob, go buy 2 of them. And they were 05 pins. And I said, I want to see him do a basket illusion like that with a 05 pin. I said, that guy just don't want you to do basket illusions. Because you ain't doing a basket illusion in a 05 pin. 05 pins, there's another thing. If you get a 05 pin and you're not certain of yourself, they have a real hard tip and they're real small. Take it, I've got a couple of them, and take it and just put a little dot on the top of your bead, because they do not dispense a lot of ink. Just put a little dot on your piece. And if you do it, and that's the pattern. I mean, don't try to do the whole piece that way. You can go back with a regular pen and do the rest of the bead that way. But you're not going to do any real basket illusions with other than them things. Like I said, they're real small tip and they're real hard tips. So I don't know. Yeah. Yes, I do. I'm sorry I didn't mention that. I use a workable fixative. I spray everything with a workable fixative at first. I usually give it a couple coats, and then I'll spray it with a matte finish afterwards, because workable fixative is a little bit shiny, and then I'll spray it with a matte finish. If you leave it sit for a couple days to make the ink totally dry, and spray it with the matte finish, or even a semi-gloss finish, or even a gloss finish, if that's what you want. After a few days of letting it sit and totally dry, you can do it with a light coat. You cannot wipe a finish on, because you're just going to end up with a smeary mess. But if you do a light mist, you can do it. But I can use a workable fixative an hour after I color it. I'll spray it with a light coat of workable fixative. A lot of times I just leave the workable fixative if I want a semi-gloss finish. That stuff is getting harder to find. I used to be able to buy it at the hardware store, but I can't do it anymore. I gotta go down the hallway and ask my wife to order it online. What are you laughing for, Larry?
I know your computer field.
Yeah.
What's the most colors you've ever used?
The common colors?
No,
The most.
colors you've ever used.
Don't know quite.
What's the most colors you've ever used?
How many?
Oh, how many? On this, 3. I may go a little bit different shade of something. The original Indian baskets, they only had 3 colors: red, black, and yellow. And you'll see very few baskets with yellow. Those are the only 3 colors that they had, that they could make out of berries and stuff. They didn't get into colors into their baskets until, I'm going to say, the late 20s, early 30s, when the tourists used to come in their Model A Fords and say, oh, a basket, I want to buy that basket. And that's when they started getting into some colors. You know, the only Indian powwow that I still know is in Tahoe. If you ever hear anything about it, they have a big weaving contest up there and that stuff. It's worth going to see and watching them weave. I mean, it's unbelievable. A basket that size would take them probably a month and a half to 2 months to weave. And if you go to Tahoe on the South Shore at the Y, there's an Indian museum right there. Beautiful. All by one basket weaver. And she was, I don't want to get involved in all this, but she was more or less enslaved by a general. Her and her husband said, I'll take care of you. All your baskets you make are mine. And then he would turn around and resell them again. So anyway, if you go to South Lake Tahoe, that museum, as soon as you turn the Y to go to South Shore and you go across the creek, it's right there. You turn immediately left and it's right there. It's a beautiful museum. And if anybody has any other questions, we're out of here. Any donuts left?